What is going on, everybody? It is David Palmer, the Leo King, and it is right before the lunar eclipse, which is happening tomorrow, Friday, February the 10th of 2017. I'm talking to you here on the 9th. It's about 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and I wanted to do this video all about tips about how to handle eclipses, especially fate train time, I'm calling it. I always call it fate train. I mean, that's kind of my coined aspect of eclipses. But the eclipse season is one of the greatest aspects in astrology in change into your life, shifting of your reality. And it's, I think, an important time for you to really pay attention with your awareness, and preparation is always very key. So I thought I'd do a live Facebook about it and do a presentation. So I got a little bit of a presentation for us all today, and I think it'll be a really good time. So hope you guys are all doing wonderful out there. If you want as well, I will be paying attention to the chat, of course. So if you're live right now on Facebook, I am loading up my chat aspect. So I will be looking at the chat, seeing if anybody has any questions and so forth like that. As you can see here, right there, you heard me. But let's just go straight into my presentation. Now, one thing about eclipses is eclipses have always been somewhat terrifying and also at the same time revolutionary and positive. They have a very bipolar aspect. A lot of the ancients, of course, did ceremonies with them. There's also this guy who is not wanting to look at it. Even people died at times during the eclipses. So the eclipses are definitely times that we need to pay attention to. I like how this woman is doing a ceremony. I like how these guys are kind of joining in the ceremony too with the drums. What are these guys doing? These guys are bringing out the, I don't know what they're doing. They're doing something with the ropes or something, but the dogs are howling at the moon. The girls here, they're kind of doing a little dance, doing a little aspect. There's another guy not wanting to look, but if you notice, there's some people choosing not to look, which I think is very interesting. And that's because eclipses are going to highlight your life so powerfully that I hope you're prepared for it. People who don't follow astrology or just aren't really aware and can feel the intensity of these times whenever the eclipses approach, you'll notice that they're not wanting to look at their life, or they're not ready for that extreme change that's coming. And that's because literally the way that the reality works, which I do have a cool slide of what I perceive kind of the reality is that happens when eclipses happen, is a whole entire new scene comes in. Eclipses are like these new scenes that come into our life, and they become this new chapter that comes in. And especially, of course, that the nodal axis, when they shift, what's interesting about these eclipses that are happening over the next 2 weeks is the nodal axis is not changing. So it's almost there's a completion of an old chapter and a new one as a new one's trying to come in. So this is a good way to describe the eclipse season that we're stepping into for this moment, the next 2 weeks, February 10th to February 26th, I would say there is this new energy kind of coming in, this Aquarian Leo, but there's still a lot of this chaotic, kind of weird, not fully understood Piscean energy that we still have to go through. So, and eclipses have usually a year to 2 years of kind of working that zone out. Think of it like as if you were to go get a massage and you had a knot, right? You want to kind of work it out. And so the nodes, which are knots, they work out that sign or that zodiac space in your chart, in the way that we look at the world, and the way that we look at, astrology as a whole. There's zones that have this energy that is literally, massaging it. And the eclipses are when, now after all the massaging, the big kind of release and the pressure points get hit really intensely. It's kind of an easier way to understand it. And this one is hitting two really weird spots. It's hitting an old spot that needs to be fixed, but it usually takes a couple years, right? It's an 18-month cycle of the nodes. And you'll usually see eclipses for 2 years, sometimes even 3 years. It all depends on how things work, right? And you'll notice that right now we're trying to end the Piscean one. And that's what's coming up. The Leo Aquarius one is coming in, but the nodes aren't there yet. So that's why I'm going to refer back to this as, it's, we're seeing a little bit too much, too fast. But, it is this, there is this aspect of a new story's coming in, but there's still a pause. There's still kind of like a hesitancy to bring it fully in, even though it's bringing in such great new energy. There's still something attached or a lesson to be learned from the past still. Now, whenever I do my horoscopes and I talk about eclipses, I always say fate train, whoop, 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 whoop. And the reason why I always say freight train is because it really is, to me, life is fated. Astrology are the moments when we reach these pinnacle points. And I've always loved the train analogy, especially on the tracks, because we come to this spot where the tracks change. Or we continue kind of on the same path, but usually you'll see that the tracks are changing in our life. And it's almost weird because the way that time works and the way that this reality works seems to be that we are on tracks. We're not flying through the galaxy with just anywhere to go. There seems to be this preordained, aspect happening of where we're going. And that's if you understand the galactic shifts, and that's if you understand what's going on, like in a whole sense of this reality, this time it is predetermined. So these eclipses, when they come, take these very predetermined points. These are the big shift points. These are the big, radical shift points. And I do want to show a quick video. And a lot of people, I think, in the astrology community might have seen this video before. But, it's always fun to show. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. So I got it. So I've always enjoyed whoever made this, but this is like a heliocentric model, planets rotating around the sun, right? But what I really want to get to is the galactic aspect. So this is one way to look at how this preordained aspect is happening. Of course, the sun is traveling on a path. But see, a lot of people think that the sun is just stationary and just sitting there. There's a lot of ways to look at that. Now, that's if you believe in a heliocentric view of things. There's some people who don't. There's some people who still believe in a more flat way. There's a lot of ways to look at this. But always a vortex or spiral, we can honestly say, is in that aspect. But what I want to show, I hope they show the galactic one. Oh, of course they don't. And what I'm trying to show here to people is to understand. Here it is right here. Of course, I've already watched this video a million times. Here's the galaxy, okay? Here's, let's say, our galaxy, right? Now, you just saw that model of how the sun goes around in the galaxy, and it's taking the planets, the Earth, and so forth, right, with it. But what's interesting about our galactic cycle, especially every 220 million years, is there is this predetermined path the sun is on. It continually goes on the same path and repeats the same patterns. And the same thing happens with eclipses. The same thing happens with all planetary moments. But as you could see, the reason why we had 2012 was this thing called the galactic plane, right? And the sun reaching the galactic plane, which means basically the equator of the universe, the midpoint, the exact equal point of high and low. And if you notice the way that the sun spirals around the universe, especially the galaxy, it'll hit this plane, and then we'll spend 12,000 years going down, and then we'll come back up for another 12,000 years, and that's where you get the 24,000 year cycle. But this is a long, long cycle that continues to go, and this is the train tracks of the universe. So to actually believe somehow that this is not going to happen, like the sun's just going to turn right now, the sun's just going to turn left at any moment whenever it wants, is literally, I don't want to say ludicrous, but studying science, studying the way that this universe is preset. They say 226, some say it's 220 million years, some say, there's a lot of flexibility around the number, but, or 26,000 years for the precession cycle. So some say that would be 13,000 years. I say 24,000. There's the Hindus say 24. It all kind of is, the math is really close. You have to take the means and the averages. But if you notice, this cycle, no matter if you have the math exact as far as years go, there's one thing that is for sure, is that this cycle continues no matter what happens around the galaxy. So now let's apply that to just the more basic aspect here on Earth and what happens with the eclipses. That the eclipses mark on Earth these extremely powerful cycles that you would experience in galactic shifts like 2012, right? December 21st, 2012 was when literally the sun reached the equal point, the galactic plane of the universe, right? Of our galaxy, as the sun now is rising up, okay? So if you think about this long term, solar eclipses are mini galactic shift points on Earth. That's how powerful eclipses are. There are mini galactic shift points, and they literally shift reality completely, and they are the moments where the tracks change. Now, predetermined tracks, not like, oh, I'm choosing to change my life right now. If you just watch the way that works, and you watch how the universe works, and you watch how solar eclipses work, you and I cannot stop the full moon tomorrow from happening. The moon is just not going to slow down a little bit and say, I'll be full next week. And especially, you're not going to see the eclipse say, you know what, I'll do a full moon, but I won't be in an eclipse. We can pre-know exactly when it's going to happen. Exactly. So to think that eclipses aren't powerful or that they're not going to shift your life, I would say take a second look and take from a very higher look on how the galaxy works and then apply it in a more micro sense. If you don't understand the macro, how are you going to understand the micro? The thing about what I truly see about eclipses is the need to really see that this is a shift in your reality completely. These are mini galactic shifts happening. Now, it's not the same thing as far as galactic-wise, but we do come into this zone where the sun and the moon, which are the Illuminaries, which are actually the most sensitive and the most mysterious aspects of astrology, right? Because they rule the illumination, they rule life, they rule the tides, they rule the controlling of this earth. For these to make these powerful and very sensitive alignments, they make our reality go through major shift, and they force us to kind of go with wherever life is taking us and kind of go with it. It's not something that can be stopped. It's not something that can just be altered in any way. You know, a lot of people in how they want to deal with eclipses like to hide under the bed, or hide under the sheets, right? Like, okay, like we could look that up as, this is the way that some people, that guy looks horrible. Poor guy. I can't even believe he probably made $200 for that. Oh, well, I don't mind a cat doing it, but this is a good analogy or a good way of seeing on how, some people want to deal with it, or we can go back to people don't want to see it in their life, because I've always said this about eclipses, is this is the way that God, here is a solar eclipse happening because the moon's coming in front of the sun. That's going to be in 2 weeks, February 26th. But the way that I've always said that eclipses are God's way of talking, because God can talk in unique ways to the planets and to the stars, right? Of course, God loves to talk through, we could see Venus switch from the evening star to the morning star and know that we're going to go through a shift in how we deal with relationships and how we're going to deal with the value systems in life and the 8-year cycle and the star pattern. And there's a lot that Venus will teach us. There's a lot that Mercury retrograde will teach us, as you could see Mercury go backwards in view, or Jupiter retrograde, you could see Jupiter go backwards in view, or there's powerful times when we can see a comet. God will speak through a comet. But the greatest ones are the eclipses, because it is dealing with the sun and the moon, and what's the most magical is how perfect and what high sense of magical, we can't even define the word, but the magical energy of divine God's knowledge is so high for this massive sun and this tiny moon to be at the exact positions to where they are perfect in view to block the sun exactly in a rim. I mean, the mathematics around that is ridiculous. If you're able to understand math, and if you're able to understand the comprehension of an eclipse, how magical they are. And they really do transform life. But the feeling could be, what happened to that? I did have this really awesome clip up, but I guess it didn't make it into view here. Oh, here it is right here. Is jumping into a whole new pool, if you're a fish, right? It's like jumping into a whole new place, and the eclipse it shifts the story. It shifts the story. It shifts it fast. And so how to deal with it is always by going with the flow. But I would also like to say that I think one of the best ways to handle eclipse is to think before you react, because whenever you're dealing with the moon, you're always going to deal with the moon in an eclipse, and you're going to deal with the sun. So you're going to deal with the Leo aspect, you're going to deal with the Cancer aspect, right? You're going to deal with this, like, I'm aware and I want to react, and then I'm unsure of emotionally how I feel about this. And when they come together or they oppose, especially on a lunar eclipse, it's a release. And a solar eclipse is like kind of the new chapter aspect beginning, right? It's like, that's kind of the more solar eclipse. If I were to depict a picture of a lunar eclipse, I guess I would, let's see, it would be, this is the best way. Oh, I know. I know what the image would be. Well, sorry, it's going to take me a minute to find a good image. Okay, yeah, okay. So this is how I would, it's like a baptism. It's like a purge. It's a purge. It's a release. It's a let go. I'm letting go. And I don't want to say that it's like I'm letting go of my sins or something, even though there could be a little bit of that with lunar eclipses, but it's letting go and releasing and cleansing and purging. The other thing I was going to do was like try and find like purge, right? Like, see if there's something, and of course they're going to show that movie, The Purge. It's like, gee, mini Christmas. It's like, that's how sad the world is. You type in words now, and movies are going to be what comes up, and it's all The Purge, right? It's like, everything's The Purge. So I don't really have anything I can show you there, but it is a purge. It is a let go. It is a release, and this one, of course, being in Leo, I have a special report I'm putting out for free tonight that will be up, of course, for people to watch on YouTube, on Facebook, and so forth, where I always do my lunar eclipse report. I always do my new moon solar eclipse reports too. But, I think that it's important to realize that it's a purge time, but you need to think, because these moments are so intense. They're so tricky, because they are switching the reality so much that when it's coming in, we can react very intensely, and especially if you're not prepared and you don't know that they're coming, you can feel like, oh my gosh, my whole world's coming apart. And then you kind of fall into the freak out, which a lot of people do under eclipses. They fall into the freak out because it literally is the universe and the world that we're in seeing this magical event that is very rare to happen. And I think that it's important to do a ceremony. It's always important to do some sort of meditation. It's always important to do some sort of, ritual. I always do a ritual. I do my dance music show. I always light incense. I light candles. I light sage. I do a dance thing because I always feel like dance has always helped me get through the eclipses. I've had some hard eclipses over the last 5 years. Always hitting something directly on my chart. And this one's going to hit stuff too for me. All of the eclipses are hitting stuff for me in my chart lately. So for me, I think it's important to do that kind of ritualistic aspect. I think for some people, just doing a little dance or just I'll be honest, this person's doing a weird kind of like I'm out there, whatever it is, you kind of feel overly, you feel like so connected with the reality during eclipse. It's intense. It just reminds you of why you're alive, Whenever I go outside, lunar eclipses I have a better time with. Solar eclipses I think are much more intense. I think they can be much more wow factor. This lunar eclipse is very positively aspected. I've shown it, I think, in a lot of charts to people, but if you look, this one's just really positively aspected. People are writing comments on is this not? There we go. So this lunar eclipse at the 22s are also connecting right there to Jupiter, also connecting to Uranus. There's so many positive aspects happening. And I'll put them in circles of where they're all connected. Even this Chiron at 22 is connected. So look at all the stuff. That's what we call within orb, okay? Orb is within how many degrees? Usually 1 to 3 degrees is typical orb. Sometimes you might see astrologers 5 degrees. Sometimes you might even see up to 10 degrees. Planets like Saturn, I usually give 5 to 7 because it's a big planet. Same thing with Jupiter. I give it because it's a big planet. If it's a small planet like Mercury, I usually give it only 1 to even 2 because it's so small. But the other thing that this eclipse is Mercury and Venus are going to be getting along. So you're going to see that. But if you notice, look at this amazing kite that's happening. Lunar eclipse, not in the kite per se, but there is a kite happening. This opposition, it's a beautiful kite. It's a perfect kite. This is a time for us to fly or not. And I think this has to deal with peace, love, or war and rebellion at the end of the day. We can choose peace and love in our own life with this eclipse that's happening tomorrow. And I didn't say this in my report, but I'm saying it now. We can choose peace and love, which I think are the harder things to aspect with the moon in Leo in a lunar eclipse and with Jupiter retrograde in Libra. But, what's trumping it right now is you got Uranus and Aries very strong with the sun in Aquarius getting along. And they're in a better aspect. And so I think that a lot of people are wanting to sabotage without even realizing. I've talked about this with the Neptune element so powerfully and so strong. It's and Chiron's so strong, feeling wounded or feeling like, oh, it's just not going to develop the way I exactly want it, especially with all this Aries, right? It's like, I want things a certain way. This is a time to choose peace and love and learn to let go of what is not bringing you peace and love. That's a big part of this eclipse, is learning to not let that, happen to you. So I would definitely think before the actions that you do over the next day. Make sure you've thought them fully through, because, things are going to come really fast, especially tomorrow as this eclipse hits. And then the 2 weeks that are in between tomorrow and February 28th, we have some very massive stuff coming up. Now, I put out a warning on my eclipse video that you can get right now. I put it half off now for $4. It's at inclusiveastrology.com, where I talk about the eclipses in the whole month. But I did put a warning out that from, once the sun comes into Pisces is when things are going to get really weird. I think that even though we're in between eclipses from the 10th from the 26th, right? Like, there's this, there's this big new shift coming, and in between eclipses is very intense, as we're kind of, and I want to bring the graphic back up to make it be known, but we're in between eclipses. So this is another way to look at in between eclipses. In between the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse is kind of like in between these worlds, right? It's kind of like doing this, It's like, oh my gosh, like this is happening in my life. Oh, what am I going to do? Right? Like, this is in between eclipses, and the world is at this kind of very fragile point. What I'll do is I'll do a drawing for you guys to understand what in between eclipses look like. So let's create a sketch. Okay. Let's create a sketch. All right, let's do this. Okay, so here's the Earth. Here's what we call the nodes, right? Okay. And let's say here's the sun and here's the moon, and here's the lunar happening, right? Boom, on the February 10th, okay? Okay, so the eclipse happens, boom. Now, what we call in between eclipses until February 26th is the moon now has to catch up and meet back up with the sun, and the sun's moving slow. Remember, slower. The moon moves much faster. But when they catch up right here, that's when, the sun and the moon, well, actually, let's do this. The sun and the moon, because the moon comes in front of the sun and blocks the sun's rays on Earth on that February 26th, we have this moment where the nodes that are creating this eclipse are in space, and the sun and the moon are rearranging themselves to kind of do it. It's almost like if we had 2 chapters and we were in between chapters, there's this in-between space, and it's very hypersensitive to people in this period. But things, I think, by February 18th, when the moon will be starting to come into squares with the sun, right? The halfway point in between eclipses will also be when the sun is coming into Pisces, which this is where the south node is in Pisces. So it's going to be very intense. And I always say that this is the most intense period of the eclipse time. And you'll hear, I've been saying it for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. I feel like I'm like an old man repeating myself all the time, but that's what I mean by in between eclipses, is when the moon has to catch up with the sun, right? And it's that in-between place. And when they finally catch up, remember the sun will come a little bit this way, but when they do catch up, bammo. Then there's the next full moon, which is not an eclipse. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you have back-to-back-to-back eclipses, right? Like we did last year. But the next full moon, which will be in Virgo, will not be an eclipse, believe it or not. And so that will be the end of that period. And that next 2-week period, so after February 26th through that 2 weeks, which I think is, March, let me do my math, 2 days in February after, because the 28th, and then another, So it's going to be around the 12th to 14th. That period is still sensitive, but it's much more of kind of when it comes to this period, the weirdness being over and kind of things have kind of slid into the change spot, and the time for change has already happened. See, this is like in between eclipses. After is like the key's been inserted and you're in that future, and it's all kind of coming together. So I hope that helps with kind of showing kind of a much more figurative way of looking at things. You also got to remember that coming up, and we'll show it real quick. So let's do okay. I like the sun at the top of my chart. So remember that in between these eclipses, so here's going to be the eclipse tomorrow, and then in between, watch Mars and Uranus. Mars is going to square Pluto by the 21st. The sun will be conjunct the south node. See that in Pisces. So that's why I said the 18th things get a little weird, because the sun comes into the natural south node's home at the time. Mars is getting ready for its square and its intensity as it's coming towards the Pluto-Uranus square. And that's why the 21st is really when things get intense. The 26th of the eclipse, Mars and Uranus are exactly conjunct in an explosion with Pluto feeding it. And a very intense time. So, the good news of right now is this eclipse is pretty easy. And I'm gonna let people see my report tonight that comes out, because I describe it in a clear way, because I know that this is a long presentation of how to understand the eclipses and kind of your tips to get through the eclipse. But you need to realize that we are being shown a beautiful future at the moment, but have to go backwards. So this eclipse is the step forward, but the next eclipse is a huge couple steps back. So, it's like prepare yourself for what's coming. Like these next couple weeks are going to deal with very high intense situations that there's going to be a lot of unpredictability with Uranus involved. The fact that the sun's in Aquarius, fact that Jupiter's involved is going to amplify things. The fact that Mars is in its home of Aries is going to make things very intense. It's coming on top of Uranus. Pluto's involved. Venus is in shadow, getting ready to retrograde. So relationships and things of manifesting are in a very sensitive place. It's a very, very, very intense 2 weeks. And it even extends out after the February 26th, because Venus goes retrograde at the beginning of March, and right at the beginning, I think it's March 4th, and then Jupiter-Uranus oppose on March 2nd. So, this is like, this is going to be, I think this will be a very positive eclipse to kind of rebring positivity into your life. The last couple of days were shitty. I'm sure you felt it. I'm sure you feel better today. Tomorrow, I think you'll feel much better. But I think that you're going to notice that, up until that February 18th point, in between eclipses, there's some positive, good energy. But boy, oh boy, once we step into Pisces, things get real slippery. And this Pisces is no joke. This Pisces transit is no joke. We're going to have a Venus retrograde in the middle of it. We're going to have a Mars conjunct Uranus. We're going to have a Mars square Pluto. We're going to have Mercury in fall, which is the worst position for Mercury. And look at that. Look at the date. February 26th, Mercury will even be in fall. And look at all that Pisces by the time we have the eclipse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 energies in Pisces. So I would prepare, folks. And again, that's why I did this presentation about how to prepare for it and how to look at everything. So thanks so much for being here. Let's see what people have to say in the chat before I go. Looks like we had a lot of people in here, Got over 627 people in here. That's pretty cool. People just are liking the visuals, which, the whole point in Facebook Live, I think, is to make it interactive and fun. And instead of, I hate sitting just in front of my couch and talking with no visualization and no aspect. I want to make it entertaining because, I try to make it like a show. But thanks for everybody's support. Yesterday, if you haven't watched it yet, because a lot of my YouTubers, for some reason, aren't on Facebook, but I wrote a long message to everybody that watches me about where I'm standing in life, how I feel about the universe, how I feel about how I've presented myself, and a lot of the information since September, especially since I came out with my movie Age of Deception, and a lot of the deception that I believe is happening right now on the planet, and how I think it's important for us to really be clear on that, how and I haven't even got into it, but over the next couple of weeks, you're going to hear me talking about the deception thing more, because we're going to have a solar eclipse on top of Neptune. So, it's extremely strong. But false flag stuff definitely coming up. But I really want people to know that if you haven't read what I posted on Facebook yesterday, please do. If you're on YouTube or if you're watching now, I really want to let people know how I feel about what's coming up, how I approach astrology, that it's much more than horoscopes, much more than just planets. And today I hope that I also got to paint a really good picture when it comes to understanding the wheels of fate, and how the wheels of fate turn and reach us to these moments. And they are fated moments. So just know that during eclipse time, the fate is very real. And don't judge yourself of how the fate happens. It was preordained. It was predestined. And do your best to handle the situations as best as you can. And do your best to be aware, and do your best to stay conscious through them, because doing a very sensitive eclipse time like the one that we are currently in, I would hate for you to get lost or caught up into some of the worst energy of your life, because it's that extreme. And I will end by saying, and by looking at the graphic that I think describes an eclipse the best, is this one. That this is what we have entered into. This is God talking to us in our life in very extreme ways. And there are ways to do it that benefit you, and there are ways to do it that don't. So, thanks so much for all the support. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for everybody that wrote their very loving messages to me yesterday on Facebook regarding what my message was to people, and how I feel about astrology, and where I'm taking astrology, and always bringing that light to astrology. I think a lot of people were doubting, as if I had one comment recently had said that what happened to the Leo King, and I haven't gone anywhere. I've got a lot of crap going on in my own chart, so I don't bring up my chart a lot. I'm not that kind of astrologer. I'm always focused on you, the universe, and everyone else. But I got my own stuff I'm dealing with, and but my core, and the reason why I'm here, and the reason why that I'm always going to bring astrology, is always going to be about bringing light and bringing love and illuminating the collective consciousness. That's the main reason I'm here. And I wanted to make that very clear yesterday, and I had to write it out instead of doing a video. So if you have the chance, please take a look at it. Thanks for all the support. If you want to reach me every day, which you can, of course, you can get me on the Leo King app, or you can watch my daily horoscope videos, sun sign horoscopes, and more importantly, you can also get all the other special videos I do. We are working on the new app. We just submitted to Apple again. We got denied. There was a problem with something that we had in there, but putting it back out there. So it's going to be quite exciting. Anyway, thanks everybody for the support. Thanks for supporting me through this crazy journey called the Leo King. I truly appreciate it, and I will see you guys on my next live report. Thanks for watching, and good luck on the eclipse. I'll put the report out. That'll be out for people to watch tonight. You'll see it on YouTube. You'll see it on my Facebook. You'll see it all over the place. Thanks so much. Sending you all my love, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.
The Leo King app is the world's first and leading video and notification astrology horoscope app for iPhone, Android, and computer. Get daily spiritual videos and addictingly accurate notifications alongside weekly sun sign horoscopes, tarot videos, and exciting new age entertainment videos by celebrity astrologer and TV personality David Palmer, the Leo King. Join today. You have nothing to lose with a 7-day free trial, and wake up to astrology like you've never seen before.
Wake up to astrology like you've never seen before.